a culture hero or a role model or anything like that. You know, I don't want it to be the absolute last word in what the trendy style is.
I don't want to be a culture hero or role model or anything like that. I don't want it to be the absolute last word in what the trendy style is. Picture this. It's 1979, backstage at the Troubadour in Los Angeles. A young assistant rushes to the promoters. Linda Ronstadt just stormed out of the green room. Again. The reason? A single name on the lineup. Not hers, not the Eagles. His. She wasn't having it. And for years, no one knew why. She kept it buried, a tight-lipped masterclass in diplomacy. But now, decades later, Linda Ronstadt has finally opened the vault. The musicians she despised. The ones she clashed with. The egos, betrayals, and creative disasters that shaped her legendary resistance. And the list. It's not what you'd expect. This is the story of the 7 musicians Linda Ronstadt couldn't stand, and how surviving them made her even stronger. Let's start with the studios, where creativity collided with control, and where some of her most bruising professional battles took place. In 1982, Linda attempted a promising duet with Paul Simon. On paper, it was gold. 2 legends. 1 track. But in the studio, the tone turned sour fast. Simon, famous for his meticulous style, kept halting rehearsals, offering unsolicited advice, rewriting lyrics, and treating Linda like a student, not a peer. She confided to friends that working with Simon felt like being talked down to by a principal. The song never materialized, and Linda vowed never to work with him again. For her, it wasn't just about the music, it was about dignity. Rewind a few years earlier, 1974. A radio show in Los Angeles. There she met Frank Zappa. Intrigued by his avant-garde brilliance, Linda considered recording one of his tracks. But Zappa saw her pop instincts as a threat. He openly criticized her voice, calling it too polished, and accused her of trying to turn his music into a radio jingle. During one brutal rehearsal, he cut the band mid-song and sneered. "This is what happens when you hand real music to a pop singer." Linda walked out, humiliated, furious, and done. But some clashes weren't just about control, they were about principle. In 1976, a joint benefit concert for farm workers became the turning point in her relationship with Neil Young. Both had reputations for activism. But when Linda suggested incorporating more popular protest songs, Young dismissed her as commercial. He refused to allow her set list ideas and pushed her off center stage. She left the event in tears. Young, when asked later, brushed it off. She wasn't built for protest. That insult hit deep. Ronstadt's activist roots ran through her Mexican-American heritage. She didn't forget being painted as shallow. And from that day on, she rejected every offer to appear with Young. To Linda, Neil became the embodiment of fake morality, loud in message, cold in delivery. Some wounds ran deeper still. Not public clashes, but betrayals from those closest. Linda and David Crosby once shared studios, stages, and the same Laurel Canyon social circle. But by 1978, Crosby's drug-fueled paranoia had taken over. During one vocal session, he refused to adjust the key for her harmony, insisting she change her range instead. The result? A full-blown screaming match, spread across industry gossip pages. Crosby later dismissed her in Rolling Stone, calling her career studio manufactured. Linda's response? Silence. And a rule. No one in her band was allowed to speak his name again. Another relationship turned sour, more famously, Don Henley. In the early 70s, Henley was just Linda's drummer and backup singer. She helped him and the Eagles rise, but once the Eagles found superstardom, things shifted. Henley's ego exploded. In 1975, backstage at the Universal Amphitheater, he mocked her music, saying she should stick to covers and let real songwriters speak. She kicked him off the tour. Friends whispered of growing bitterness. Henley, allegedly full of swagger and substance abuse, once said she was too precious for rock and roll. Privately, Linda labeled him a climber. Someone who sold his soul for fame. But some rivalries were downright humiliating. In 1968, Linda crossed paths with the wildest frontman of the 60s, Jim Morrison. At a private after-party near the Whiskey A Go-Go, Morrison drunkenly dragged her on stage mid-performance. It should have been magic. Instead, he collapsed into her mic stand after trying to kiss her, turning the moment into chaos. The press didn't catch it, but Morrison did bring it up later, in interviews, mocking her as sweet but spineless. Linda never forgave it. She once described him as a brilliant wreck who poisoned everything around him. Even artists she barely knew found a way to dig in. Fast forward to 1979. A Cleveland festival. Linda was headlining, but a young, sharp-tongued Brit named Elvis Costello had something to say. During a press session, he mocked her as background music for brunch. Linda confronted him backstage. Drunk and smug, Costello hurled another insult and walked off. She was stunned, not just by the disrespect, but by the generational cruelty. To her, Costello was cold, clever, and emblematic of a new wave of arrogance. And then there was Linda's defining moment of silent protest.
That night at the Troubadour, the one that opened this story, she left not because she was afraid. Not because she was dramatic. But because she was done letting the men around her dictate her worth. That man on the schedule. He was the final name in a long list of people who underestimated her.
For years, Linda Ronstadt chose grace. While the music world spun in scandal and headlines, she stayed focused, poised. She didn't shout. She didn't tweet. She didn't name names, until now. These stories aren't about bitterness, they're about clarity. Because Ronstadt's legacy isn't just her voice. It's her silence, her resistance, her refusal to play by the rules of a male-dominated industry. She didn't just survive these egos, she outlasted them.
And maybe that's the real story here, not just who Linda Ronstadt hated, but how she survived them all. Thank you for watching Rock Fame Diaries, where we uncover the real stories behind rock legends. If you enjoyed this deep dive into Linda Ronstadt's battles and bravery, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit that bell for more untold stories from the world of music. Until next time, stay bold, stay curious, and keep the music alive.